Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Event Industry News podcast. I am Adam Parry, editor at Event Industry News, and today I am joined by Molly Falco, Director of Marketing at Swoogo. Molly, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Adam. It's great to be here.
Molly, for those that aren't aware of Swoogo, can you do me the quick hit introduction? What does Swoogo do and how does it do it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Swoogo is a event registration and marketing platform. We've been around for about 7 years now. Swoogo was founded by two founders who had actually previously been in the space with combined space experience of a couple of decades, and decided to create this amazing product that was easier to use and more flexible and a little bit more upfront than some of the other platforms that we had seen on the market. And that's where Swoogo comes in with full-scale, unlimited conditional logic registration, DIY event websites, and some really cool marketing features like tracking and analytics and email marketing.
So you're like a real powerhouse of technologies and suites of technologies that really help empower, I suppose, event organizers, event marketers to do their job easier, better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We had seen, I use the imperial we here. Obviously, I was not part of this, but Leonora Valvo, our founder, had seen a lot of the larger registration platforms sort of creating headaches for planners as they use them. And she wanted to create something that was so straightforward. Her whole ethos through building Swoogo has been to make everything as easy as possible and really user side friendly. So you don't need to have someone on the tech team help you out. You don't need someone who can code. You don't need a designer. Swoogo is easy to use start to finish for your everyday event planner. And that's sort of the greatest part about it.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you come from that side of it, because as my role as editor of Event Industry News, get my words out, and obviously founder at Event Tech Live and the Event Technology Awards, we see some amazing technology, but most of the time, or some of the time, it's actually overcomplicated, too feature rich, and is really hard for the events industry or event organizers to wrap their head around, because it would take so much time to kind of learn the platform, right? And, things that work really well are generally the most simplest. Look at Google. It's a search box. You enter your term and you hit and you go and you're off. So it's great to hear that you guys come from that side of things. And I suppose that kind of brings us nicely on to the core part of what we're here to talk about today, which is your pivot, quite quickly, actually, super quick, to virtual, or providing a platform in which your customers or prospects can actually use Swoogo to deliver their virtual events. So can you tell me a little bit about, I suppose, first, the decision process to go from not offering that to then offering a virtual solution? How did that come about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the decision to create what is actually going to be a new permanent product arm called Swoogo Virtual, I guess creating a permanent product arm came a little bit later, but the decision to sort of pivot in this direction came twofold, right? First, we saw what was happening, in the world surrounding COVID-19. Many events were being canceled. Event planners were sort of struggling to understand what their next steps were. And also, on a more internal and more, close to home perspective, our customers were coming to us and saying, what do you recommend? What do we do? What's our next step? They often didn't even know where to start with virtual events. So, we wanted to make sure not only, that we had a great product, but also that we were really supporting the events industry. Leonora Valvo, again, our founder, has never wanted to leave event planner stranded. Again, that's been her ethos the whole time, make things easy. So she knew that, immediately we needed to start creating an easy to use virtual platform that would support our existing customers and anyone else who was sort of floundering around, not knowing where to go with virtual. And that's what we created. We joke that it was, 40 days to a fully imagined Swoogo Virtual since, events sort of started to get shut down. And what that started with was a pretty simple solution workaround, just sort of creating a place for virtual events to live within the existing Swoogo product. But since then, it's really blossomed into a really interesting feature set surrounding, both the ease of importing data back and forth between streaming platforms and Swoogo, and some security features that I'm excited to dig a little bit deeper in on. And now, looking forward, even seeing if we can start to build out our own streaming platform.
Yeah, I really like that, picking up on what you said there about building on the existing technology, building the existing infrastructure that Swoogo has, right? So you've obviously been around for 7 years. You've built systems that are customized and delivered in the way that the event organizer wants them. And we understand how important data and data structure is around registration and getting that important information in that you can then personalize your follow-up marketing, your agendas, your content for your attendees, and just wrap that into your marketing. And what I've heard from some of the more virtual focused platforms that have come from virtual and not necessarily a physical side of things, is that they're not quite there at that point where they can offer the registration schema and the way that event organizers want those participants to register for their events in the way that they need. So it's interesting to see that you guys are building on, successful existing technology and then leveraging virtual technologies to really wrap that up in a powerhouse of a platform.
Yeah.
So what virtual or what platforms have you guys partnered with, integrated with, connected up with to be able to offer that side of things, to offer the virtual element of it?
Yeah. So my favorite thing about our virtual solution is that it's actually streaming platform agnostic. So if you want to come to us and say, my company is already using Zoom or GoToMeeting or On24, whatever you're using, we're happy to work it into our Swoogo solution. And with that, obviously, we've built some stronger integrations. Zoom being the one that sort of we worked on first, and the upcoming one will be On24. That being said, we wanted to make sure that we weren't forcing event planners who are already in a time of a lot of tumult, right? Trying to figure out an entirely new way to run events. We didn't want to force them to also learn a new streaming service, right? There's no sense in that. You're not getting anywhere if you're just trying to figure out how to unmute yourself on a platform you're not familiar with. So we wanted to make sure that it was so flexible that way. But, truly, again, our Zoom integration is really elegant. It's still sort of in a beta phase right now, but, anytime this week, any day now, that should be fully concrete. And our On24 integration is right on its heels. So we're excited about both. Obviously, those create sort of the most seamless data passage for our customers, but any platform actually works. And I wanted to get into this a little bit more deeply with the security measures we've put in place, which is something that our team felt really strongly about. We had been seeing all the headlines that everyone has, Zoom bombing and, who's watching your meeting and who can get into it. And then we also had some interesting questions from our customers, which were more around, my attendees pay per session. How do I keep attendees, people who didn't pay, out of those sessions? Which was interesting. Of course, there's a solution to, on their day of event page, only show specific sessions to certain people, but it didn't prevent link sharing, and it didn't prevent things like Zoom bombing or people being able to access your meetings sort of independently. So what we created was a sort of single sign-on option that actually reroutes any streaming platform link into a Swoogo link. So every time someone receives a streaming platform link, they're forced to come to Swoogo, they're forced to sign into their registration, really gating events and sessions for all of our customers, making sure that people who they don't want in there can't get in. And then if you're using Zoom specifically, even when you're redirected to Zoom and you try and pass that link to someone else, you can't do it, which I think has been one of the coolest features that we've built so far into this Swoogo virtual solution.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. I'd love to learn a little bit more how you did that in 40 days, because that's impressive. But, speaking to organizers that I'm connected with, some of the things that you're covering off there are absolute fears or trepidations of theirs of, like, how do we go about this? Revenue protection is one thing, and I think the industry is trying to get their head around driving revenue through virtual events as a whole.
Yep.
But if that revenue isn't protected because people can just access that information or access that content, then that makes it that much harder, right?
Absolutely.
It almost becomes like the copy DVDs of the kind of like the 90s, when everybody was having stuff around and nobody was going to the cinema. So it's great to hear that. And I think, in the modern day that we live in, GDPR here in the UK and Europe, and things that are coming into place in America, that security, that extra level of protection and trust around a platform, is where technology companies are really going to shine. And I know for a fact when it comes to security, and also going back to your point about being agnostic to the platform that that organizer or a customer wants to use is super important. I'm quite close to one of the largest exhibition organizers here in the UK, and their process, which is quite streamlined and a really great process for onboarding new providers. If that stuff's not in place, then it can be a 12-month process before they've got a new suite of technology in place for their event organizers to use. So if they've already got an existing platform, there's no change management, there's no new learning of a platform. They've probably got that hooked up into other things like their sales and CRM systems and back office and all that kind of stuff. So I can see how that play from your point of view is very powerful in allowing the adoption of your platform very, very quickly, right?
It's absolutely huge. I mean, from working with companies who are part of like big 5 consulting companies in the States, large media companies, the types of security measures that those businesses go through in order to choose their software partners, they aren't quick. I mean, as you just pointed out, it can take months. We've seen it, as those customers have bought into our own platform, the types of sort of contract review and security measures that have to go into place. So imagine these types of companies trying to now, pivot to a new streaming platform that requires an additional level of due process to try and, decide whether or not it's something that's going to be secure enough for their business. It would be insane. It would take months to get virtual events off the ground. And unfortunately, that's just, time that planners don't have right now. So being able to sort of remain a partner regardless of what direction you want to go in with your streaming is just so huge to us.
Absolutely. Now, you did mention earlier in the conversation that there may be on the horizon Swoogo's own streaming service, right? What advantages do you see there for you as a business, but also for your customers in developing that yourself? Because most would say that's kind of crazy considering there are so many out there already doing it. So kind of what's the strategy behind that and what are the benefits to customers and stuff?
Sure. Well, first of all, everything we've ever done has sort of erred on the side of crazy. It's the event tech industry and event registration specifically is something that there just hasn't been a lot of boat rocking going on since, Leonora and Tim Cummins, her co-founder, sort of stepped onto the scene.
Mm-hmm.
So we're excited to sort of do something that sounds a little bit nuts. We actually right now are focused entirely on virtual, our development team. And like I said, or I touched on a little bit earlier in this conversation, we actually created a whole new arm called Swoogo Virtual that's being led by Michael Sabani, who is previously our director of brand experience. So we have a focused team working on these products. So we are very excited that we're able to move on them so quickly. One of the sort of key advantages and one that's always been central to Swoogo is about branding and white labeling. So when we join a Zoom meeting, you immediately lose the brand of the event, right? It's always going to look like Zoom. You can make incremental changes. On24 is a great platform for that. You can certainly bring in some of your brand colors and make things a little bit, more specific to your event. However, the level of customization that's available through any of these platforms is just, in our opinion, just not quite enough. We built Swoogo around the idea that everything is branded. Swoogo should not appear anywhere on your event. It's your event, your design, your theme, your URL. Swoogo is not even down at the bottom of the page. You can't find us. And we wanted to replicate that experience that you would see for a landing page for a live event into this sort of virtual event experience. So by building our own player that you can actually sort of embed really directly into a Swoogo site, we're able to preserve that brand identity from what you saw when you landed on the landing page and when you registered all the way through to the day of your event.
I think that's really important. There are a lot of event agencies out there that want to leverage technology, but manage and control it themselves and somewhat protect themselves from maybe their customer jumping ship and sometimes kind of going off and doing their own thing. Let's be honest about that. But I think there's also, when it comes to corporates, brands, and me as an event organizer, thinking about myself, I might have sponsorships. I might have Zoom's competitor, I don't know, as a sponsor. And could that element of that Zoom delivery technology there kind of get in the way of that relationship? I could absolutely see it. So yeah, I think when it comes to revenue again, sponsorship, and brand identity, I can absolutely see how full control over how that visitor, how that attendee interacts and experiences that whole virtual event from end to end is super important.
Absolutely.
Are you looking at that side of things as well? Are you looking at how Swoogo and those platforms might be able to help organizers generate revenue from branding sponsorships, that kind of stuff? Because I think that's one of the big questions at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of things just to touch on quickly. First of all, just to make sure that my chief software developer doesn't kill me after this call, I do want to say that this is a product that, our internal streaming product is something that is, being worked on, being tested, being looked at. I don't want anyone to come to us and say, great, we're ready to stream via Swoogo Virtual. We're not there yet, so please bear with us, but it is something that's, very directly on our horizon. Second of all, I think something you brought up is, if one of my sponsors is GoToMeeting, I'm not going to be able to use a Zoom link, which was something we thought of immediately. And one of the coolest things about being platform agnostic is that you can actually use any of them and a mix of them in any event. So if you want your keynote to be in GoToMeeting, but you want your sponsor pages to work through Zoom booths, you're welcome to do that. You can use a mix and match of as many different platforms as you want to with our solution. Now, what I just talked about a little bit is how we're handling sponsors and exhibitors with this new solution, which is the idea that you actually don't really have to change what a booth experience is like when you bring it virtual. So what you can do is really easily land on a sponsor or exhibitor page. You can download any content they want you to have. And more importantly, you can click on a standing booth link, which just allows you to come in and chat with your sponsor or exhibitor the same way you and I are chatting now, which is a great way to make sure that those types of attendees have real ability to connect with your attendees, not just, a banner ad or not just a little downloadable PDF, but somebody can drop in and chat with them at any time, which is just absolutely huge to make sure that we can continue running events that way. It's how we've always done them. And what's really cool about the single sign-on feature is that when someone clicks on the link to come to your booth, let's say you're my sponsor, Adam, and they come to click and chat with you, I'm now tracking everybody who came to that booth. So instead of needing to scan a QR code like you would at a live event, I've now collected all of that data as the event organizer, and I can pass that on to you as my sponsor or as my exhibitor, which is really key to proving ROI for any of these sponsors who might come to an event.
Yeah, I know you're an exhibitor yourself. I see you at industry trade shows and conferences and events. So I know that Swoogo fundamentally fully believe in face-to-face as a value proposition to getting the brand and marketing the company out there. But that experience is clearly transitioned over into what would we see as value as a virtual exhibitor, right? And I actually think, I come from a digital world. Event industry news is digital. We don't have a physical publication. I think the most we print is like a business card every now and again. But we understand the power of digital and all the benefits. And I think the events industry is kind of slowly over the last, being forced in some way, cutting on to, actually, there's a lot more data, a lot more insight, a lot more follow-up through things like retargeting and data capture and lead capture and dwell time and all that kind of stuff that can be then provided to the exhibition sponsor or the exhibitor. And not only that, then when you actually position it as a potential long-term cost saving and sustainability exercise, you're a distributed team, so are we at Event Industry News. It would mean no travel, no implication of costs of hotel and all that extra stuff that actually sometimes makes exhibiting at events too expensive, right? Let's be honest about it. Traveling internationally, sending your stand somewhere, hotels, food and beverage, and all that other stuff that goes into exhibiting events kind of sometimes takes a lot of the field out of being able to play at the game because of it just, the startups or new companies, or they just don't have that budget to allocate. Whereas actually virtual, which can still work, super well with face-to-face, has all these other advantages, both financially and trackability as well, data insight and stuff. So I don't know how you feel about that.
No, it's absolutely huge for us. I mean, we've already seen an event. One of our customers, I won't name them directly, already ran an event using our virtual solution, a fairly large one that they typically see, over 10,000 attendees for. But this virtual version of it, they saw 30,000 attendees register for their event.
Wow.
So you can see pretty immediately that, by eliminating the need to travel or physically be somewhere, or take, these full days away from your office or your home office, if you're Swoogo, you're able to sort of generate so much more interest and be able to bring your content to so many more people, which is huge. And of course, on the exhibitor side, that matters too. I mean, we come to Event Tech Live every year. I can say firsthand that one of our largest costs is just travel and lodging for our staff. So, when you eliminate that, first of all, you're able to create so much more, right? Some of the materials that we could create, maybe we could have a better booth, maybe we could have better videos, but we can't think that, right? Because we're sending all this money down the drain of airline tickets. So in order to sort of be able to make sure, that's not a great sentence, but in order to make sure that our exhibitors can sort of bring the best content to these online events, first of all, we needed to create places for them to live. So hosting video from YouTube or Wistia, being able to host any sort of written or print documents and have these live meetings. I mean, they can focus so much energy and money on creating beautiful content for those pages now, instead of focusing the energy on, finding hotel rooms, for their eight staff members. So it's just so much smarter and easier. And frankly, of course, live events are coming back. And of course, we're all going to be back in our exhibitor booths, hopefully sooner than later. And we want that and we're hungry for it. But we also believe really strongly that this sort of virtual version of the event is something that can live, not only as a standalone, but as part of hybrid events going forward, so that you do have the opportunity to bring in more sponsors and more exhibitors who might not be able to come to your event, but will always have a digital home alongside your event for attendees to visit.
Yeah, and I just leading on from that, I think one of the things that the events industry has been doing, at least for the last decade, while I've been kind of at the heart of it, is talking about the 365-day engagement platform, right? It's the unicorn of event organizers. How do we keep in touch with our prospects, our audience all year round? And some do it with blogs, some do it with publications. But very rarely it happens. And what tends to happen is, people are forgotten about for like 7 months, and then all of a sudden the social media chain starts up and the email marketing kind of kicks off again. And a lot of the time people have moved on, they've changed, they've, new people are in place and all that kind of stuff. And event organizers have struggled to kind of capture that information. And I think one of the most powerful things that virtual, and you touched on it with being able to upload content, is it becomes evergreen content, right? We know that I think 90 or 80% of YouTube content is actually historical content that's kind of like over a year old.
Yep.
It's all about discoverability. It's all about somebody coming across that content at that time. And I think virtual events with the evergreen ability allows a lot more people to get involved and then funnel into that physical face-to-face event and then get all the value out of being in front of each other, right? So are you kind of positioning that? Are you looking at your platform being something that can sort of sit there for 365 days for a customer and kind of pump that content out?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the interesting sort of one of the cool things about Swoogo is that we've always operated on an annual license model for our subscriptions. So anytime a customer comes to Swoogo, they have Swoogo for a year. It doesn't matter how many registrations they have, and it doesn't matter how many events they have live, which actually creates a really unique ability to create this event hub that sort of can sit there 365 days a year. You can continue to host your content there. You can have your library there. You can have last year's content there, and it can remain live for as long as you want it to, up to a year, assuming you renew. But what I think is really lovely about that is that, I think one of the big conversations around virtual events is, how do we get people to attend them live? How do we sort of make this more than YouTube content? How can we make this more valuable than something I could Google and find a video for? Because as you and I both know, you can find a video on pretty much any topic at this point. The internet is just drowning in content. There is a TED Talk on every subject on the planet. So, where is the divide and where is the line between what we do live and what we do post-show, or what we can do for attendees who couldn't make it in person? And I think, as we're sort of discovering that line, we're realizing that, once you have, registered and paid for my event, there's very little point in making you sit here at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday. I don't know what's going on with, your kids, or you have a meeting, or you've got an investor coming in. We don't know. So by all means, like once you've decided you want our content, there's really no harm in saying, okay, now you can access it whenever you want to, which is amazing. And it's something we're actually learning from like online courses that have been around for a long time that I think people maybe didn't really consider or take advantage of, but things like Coursera, or we see Harvard Online a lot in the US, these sort of course streaming platforms that have actually cornered this. And it's strange to me that the events industry didn't come on faster to this, but we're excited to be able to support the events industry as they move this way. And I think, one of the core reasons to do it with a platform like Swoogo, instead of, going to a Coursera or just having a YouTube or a Wistia library, is that as we're talking about hybrid events, and as we're talking about events becoming live again, all that data you're getting from people who are watching this historical content is now centralized. So your live event and your virtual event data is all in the same place, living happily for your marketing as you move into next year's event. And I think that's one of the coolest things we can offer is, you have this hub, you have the historical content, people can browse at their leisure, and you're capturing them the exact same way you would capture a live event attendee.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I think about my own personal self, I don't really want to admit this, but I always look into my screen time and think about myself as a consumer of content. And I think YouTube said, now I will preface this with, I have an 8-month-old son who loves a channel called Hey Bear. So part of this is him. But I spent 44 hours on YouTube in the last month.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot of YouTube.
And that's not including Netflix and other. I consume content online. That's what I do. I like to learn about home baking, crafts, that kind of stuff. So I watch a lot of like how-to videos.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the events industry is. We're putting on events with speakers telling you how to do stuff, right? Now the interesting thing is that when I watch a YouTube video, apart from Google being able to let advertisers kind of retarget me, which is whatever, I can even kind of stop that and limit that. I'm not giving anything to that content producer, that guy or girl who spent all that time producing that content that I've enjoyed. I'm not giving my email address unless maybe they've got something for me to sign up to. But there's a huge gap in kind of value exchange, right? Whereas event organizers are coming at it from a totally different perspective. They know how to get value exchange. They've done that for years. And now with technologies and platforms like yours, they're able to kind of switch that onto online, capture the attention of Adam Parry, who spends 44 hours a month on, online, and even use platforms like YouTube and other platforms to kind of like maybe just tease out a little bit of content as that lead into kind of, come on, here's a freebie. Now, if you enjoyed this, come and enjoy like the other 80 plus hours of content that I've got as part of my virtual and physical event.
Totally.
Anytime you want, whenever you want. And I think that's super, super powerful. So, for you guys to be able to be building upon what you kind of got already founded and obviously being used around the world in terms of getting people to sign up for face-to-face events and market to them. I would be super excited if I was sat in your shoes about what the possibilities are now for Swoogo to help event organizers, event producers kind of leverage digital and virtual as a marketing, as a revenue stream, as just engagement. It must be super exciting.
Yeah, no, we really are extremely excited. I think, one of the things that we've noticed as we came into this virtual space is the proclivity of event organizers to engage with platforms that feel more like live events. I'm trying to say that in a way that isn't gonna, strike a wrong chord with anyone, but realistically, we have a strong opinion on this, which is, we're so focused on creating live content that you have to show up for on time. And then you sit on this video that looks like, some expo hall's lobby, and it's got like a weird screen on it. And it's just, I get it, right? We want to recreate a familiar experience. And that's where we gravitate towards. But realistically, that's not how we consume content online. We consume content online on our time. It doesn't involve like a 3D Second Life event space. We just interact the way we interact with a YouTube video or a TED video, and I'm excited that Swoogo is now sort of pushing that vision towards event organizers who maybe hadn't considered that you don't need to cling quite so strongly to sort of the old version of what an event looks like if it's online. That's as our Michael Sabani, our director of Swoogo Virtual, pointed out, he sees his mom, who's 75, FaceTiming his son, who's 5. So you've got this range of people who are all digital natives, right? We live on the internet and we consume content in a way that is internet first. So, this need to sort of push a very live experience onto event attendees it's just non-existent. There's no one who can't manage the virtual experience, which is really cool.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. We don't go to Netflix and they're trying to replicate a cinema, right? They don't try and fake it. Some people have got cinemas at the house, so that would be really awkward. It would be like Inception. But yeah, you're right. They don't focus on the experience, because the experience is a special thing, and I think somewhat as an industry we should be protective of that. We shouldn't necessarily be trying to replicate that online, because that's what makes face-to-face events special. When you walk into a room and there's that buzz, that electric and that atmosphere, that's never going to be replicated online. No. So what we should focus on is great content in an engaging way. You see, I think personally there's more work for event organizers and speakers to be done around production value when it comes to virtual events. Lighting, sound is probably more important than video, right?
Yep.
And what are the speakers? Are they learning the transition from face-to-face to virtual? Because when there's some social norms, when we walk into a hall or a conference room, we respect the speaker on stage. We keep quiet, we turn our phones off. There's kind of social norms that kind of control that environment somewhat. When it comes to online, there are no social norms. I'm going to check my email. I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to put myself on mute. I'm going to get distracted. I'm going to go and pet the dog. There's all these kind of things that would actually make it a real challenge for speakers to make sure that they keep the attention of their things. Yep. So I think the technology is one aspect of it. And, that's going to be made super easy by companies like yourself who are doing all the hard work and the legwork for event organizers. I think more of their focus should go on to learning more about digital and learning more about how great YouTube stars keep people coming back in their millions upon millions upon millions each month with no email addresses. I mean, that's the great thing, right? So, if you're listening to this and you're kind of worried about the tech, just ring Molly and Swoogo and they'll take care of that bit for you. Spend your time learning on kind of like the virtual and the physical kind of differences and what makes sense. I
do, Adam, before we wrap up too much, I did want to throw this out there though, because we've been talking a lot about content, and obviously content that has longevity is super important to the solution. But I know you also just quickly said, you can't replicate a show floor. You can't. You're absolutely right. You'll never get that buzz. But one of the things we've been thinking about a lot at Swoogo is, what's missing from virtual events that makes it different from just sort of a content hub. And what we love about live events is serendipity.
Yep.
So the ability to run into anyone when you're getting coffee, or just bump into an old colleague who's standing with someone else, and sort of meeting people who you wouldn't normally meet. So, just to quickly touch on that, with one of the things we believe in really strongly is that with sort of the advanced registration process, you can push attendees through via Swoogo, and things like unlimited conditional logic that allow you to ask so many good, pertinent questions. You can actually create more robust attendee matching and create really interesting sort of serendipitous experiences. As the organizer, you can generate those for your attendees. So that's a piece, of what you can create with Swoogo that only occurs when it's live. So that doesn't exist for your sort of living content hub. It's a good reason for your attendees to come to your event on your day of event. And it's a good way to replicate sort of what's missing. Why do I pay to go to an event? It's not honestly to watch the speakers a lot of the time, even though I get a lot of great information out of that. Like we said, the content lives online. So being able to sort of meet people who you wouldn't normally meet, or run into someone unexpectedly, or just be randomly paired with somebody randomly, obviously using data from the event organizer, is a huge opportunity for all of these planners to come in and create that live experience at their virtual events. So I just wanted to make sure that, we're sort of reiterating that we're not just creating like another YouTube over here. And while that's a cool aspect of it that we love, we are also really thinking about what makes it sort of a an event that you would pay for, right? What makes it a live event that you actually are really rearing to go to on the day of? So we've got both sides covered. Just wanted to make sure that was clear too.
No, no, I'm super glad you got that in there because thinking about again my own experiences from industry events and events that are kind of a little bit further outside of the events industry. Some of the biggest value I've got of connections that I've made that we don't do business together. I don't, give them marketing dollars. They don't give me marketing dollars. There's no exchange of business there, but they are highly valuable to me because they are sources of inspiration and information and networking and content and discussion about, things that can't necessarily take place online. They have to take place kind of in confidence. And, people like Nick Borelli and Will Curran and kind of some of those event industry kind of people that you see at the forefront of stuff. I can remember meeting them at IMEX, and it wasn't a speaking session. It was kind of like at one of the drink networking things, or I can't even remember if it might have been the smoking area. So maybe that's something we'll have to replicate as well. Kind of like,
we'll figure that out next.
I tell you what, I'm maybe this is something you're already looking at. What I would love to see is that element of events that happens, which is about that serendipity, but it's about the people that are, is it the seven, I can't remember what the analogy is, but let's say it's, I know you and you know somebody that would connect well with me. It's like Adam has recommended Molly and David speak. Like,
totally.
recommendation's quite powerful, right? Because I trust you and Dave trusts me and vice versa. And somebody saying that you should speak to somebody forces you into a position where you do talk to them. Yeah. And those are the really powerful connections as well. So maybe that's something that Swoogo or another company will kind of develop, is that, I see that these people are attending and I know both of them, but they don't know each other. So they should speak, yeah. Like do like a little nudge or a push in that direction kind of thing.
That's such a good point. And, it's not something that we have on the horizon right now, but, I'm sure our product team will listen to this after and maybe take your advice. But, another thing that, we've always sort of believed in is sort of sticking to what we do at our core and doing it really well, which I know sounds funny when we're talking about a new virtual arm, but, at the end of the day, it is still very much Swoogo. We haven't changed much about the product to make it happen.
Yep.
But what, Leonora Valvo believes in is sort of creating these connections with other companies and creating really seamless integrations and partnerships. We call it the Event Tech Tribe, that allow our attendees to sort of move through these different pieces of, or not attendees, allow our customers to move through these different pieces of software in a way that feels really native, and their data moves through it that feels really native. So, maybe someone else, a nice partner will come along who's doing that, because I think you're right. That is like a huge piece of attending these live events, and maybe one day we'll be able to get them in the tribe with us, which would be really exciting.
Yeah, so one of the matchmaking companies, jump on it first, right? Reach out to Molly if you're not already doing it or not already working with them. There's a $1 million suggestion for you. Do the friend suggestion. I'm sure somebody's probably already thought of it or kind
They're
of
on it
at the moment. And your dev team, I know they say that you'd say that if you said it was coming out tomorrow, they'd kick off, but they like to tell everybody that it takes longer than it actually does.
Right.
Molly, what does the future of events look like for you as a company? For us in the UK, there's not so much a horizon of face-to-face just yet. The focus is on kind of virtual and leveraging that. What do you see as a company? What does it look like post COVID-19?
Yeah. I mean, like you said, we're not sure when that's coming. It's tough to pinpoint it. We've heard recommendations, everything from, fall of this year to fall of next year, when we might be able to have live events again. So for us, the focus just has to be on, improving these digital experiences to the point that you don't miss that face-to-face. And I mean, we're talking about things as far reaching as, do we ship every attendee in an event a VR headset and use virtual reality in our events? I mean, we've looked at every angle, and we're going to continue to do that because, the horizon is far off. And when it comes, we know that we'll continue to look at hybrid events, and that, the impact of these virtual events is going to be lasting. I think planners will have gotten good at it and they will have seen how to create revenue from virtual, and they will have seen how to bring their content to larger audiences via virtual. And I think after we've sort of gone down this route, it'll be hard to go back. It's the same thing as we've seen with a distributed company. You know, we just couldn't imagine being in an office at this point. And yeah, you had to sort of reinvent the wheel in order to make that happen in a way that worked really well. But after that wheel was reinvented, you know, why pay for the lights when we can all just work from home? So it's interesting, and we think that same effect will happen to events. We'll see more virtual events going forward. We'll see more hybrid events going forward. And in the meantime, we're just going to be over here working as fast as we humanly possibly can to sort of create a more robust, more valuable solution for all of our customers and for the industry as a whole.
Yeah, I reflect that thought process as well. I think actually a lot of event organizers are going to realize that as well as face-to-face, virtual events can actually mean a lot more opportunity for them, both as growth of business, growth of audience, but growth of revenue, because the one thing that unfortunately we can't create more of is hours and minutes in the day. And when we're physically somewhere building an event, de-rigging it at the event, that time is locked in. But actually that face-to-face event could be happening with 10 virtual other events happening at the same time, right?
Yep.
So I think slight change in skill set, and I'm sure this was coming anyway. It was just a case of this lit a fire under everybody to kind of adapt and get those skill sets quicker, right?
It's true. I mean, and we've seen that prediction before. I think Leonora would be the first to tell you that, you know, she's sort of steered event tech companies over a few crises that, you know, caused events to stop. But we're also the first to say this is the first time we've seen them have to pause for so long. And so instead of just having a couple of reactionary virtual events that we sort of slap together and say, okay, we did that, thank God live is back. We're sort of in this position where we're forced to learn, we're forced to take our time, we're forced to really create these experiences in a way that is more than a webinar and more than we've ever tried before. So, you know, this is, you know, we've seen, you know, okay, well, maybe people are all going to switch to virtual events after this before. It's never happened. I think that this could be a really interesting pivot time, just because, you know, there is going to be so much learning that happens. And that's why Swoogo Virtual is now permanent for us. You know, we think that there's no way that this can go away entirely, even when live events are back, which of course we'll all be thankful for, but we want to be prepared for, you know, whatever the future of events looks like at all times.
Yeah, there's no chance of face-to-face events disappearing. If you look at the virtual worlds, let's look at gaming, online gaming, they're coming from a virtual world into a physical world and creating esports and physical infrastructure where their audiences, their fans can come and connect up with them, because there's so much value in that. It's not going anywhere.
No, Molly, we've never worried for the events industry. It's strong and it's always going to be here. We love live events.
We are an industry that supports every other possible industry or sector that you could ever think of. So unless they all disappear, we ain't disappearing. That's the fact of it. Molly, for those that are interested in learning more about Swoogo, the virtual event platform, or even just connecting up with yourself, how do they go about doing that? Where do they go? Where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can always visit our site at get.swoogo.com. And, you know, we've got our whole page on virtual there, and feel free to connect with our sales team via our homepage. You can also connect with me directly. Again, my name is Molly Falco. It is scary to put your email address out on a podcast, but I would like to create an open invite for anyone to connect with me. So you can always reach me at mfalco@swoogo.com.
Oh, don't worry about that. I have my email address on the internet, and I survive. Don't worry.
Yeah, just don't send any hate mail.
For anybody listening, if you've enjoyed today's content, please do reach out to Molly and the team at Swoogo. They are fantastic individuals and an organization that are really helping the industry move forward when it comes to technology. If you enjoyed today's podcast, also give us a rating if that is what you would like, or share it with your network if you feel that they would get value from listening in or watching as well. Molly, thank you very much for joining me on today's podcast, and we'll speak soon.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. It's great talking to you.